So here I am in my main office. This is where I record most of my YouTube videos. It's where I do most of my YouTube work. And I'm here because I received a good question from a commenter called Cameron Lee Horace, who said, what's your plan for the PC now you have the Mini? And what they're referring to is the Mac Mini here. He published that comment on a video I published last November, so November 2024. And when I bought the M4 then, it was because this is a good computer. It's a cool computer. It's a Mac, which I didn't have at the time. But the main reason I bought this was because I wanted to see how viable it would be to move my whole recording setup here from this large Windows desktop to something more manageable. A Mac Mini, a Mac Studio, a MacBook, or perhaps a combination of those. For a long time, I didn't get around to doing the tests that I wanted to. But over the last few days, I have been doing lots of OBS recording tests. I've been moving settings over, and you can see here, I've been playing around with DaVinci Resolve on my Mac Mini. And over here, we've got DaVinci Resolve on Windows. So in this video, I'd like to talk about that whole process and talk about migrating over to the Mac, or whether I am going to do it, and just talk about my Windows computer. But before I do that, I have a problem. So let me diverge for a second. When I record a video and I edit it in DaVinci Resolve, the last thing that I do is create the subtitles from audio. Now, sometimes that freezes this, and what I have to do is create a new project, copy the audio over, and then create the audio file. But I believe one of the reasons that's happening is because of an SSD that I'm using. I've got a SanDisk SSD here. It's a SATA SSD. It's 4 TB, lots of storage. But the reason that is relevant is because a while ago, I decided to not use my NVMe drive. I took it out. I was using it as external storage, and instead I was using the 4 TB SanDisk SSD in here for caching. Now that was a little bit silly. I was just playing around with things, but what that means is that when I'm caching files here, I'm not getting like 3 gigabytes per second. I'm going to get about 500, 550 megabytes per second. So that causes it to stall sometimes. I think that's the root of the problem that I've got. So I'm going to put an NVMe into the motherboard here. Got the little cover for the M2 NVMe, and hopefully that will fix the problem. So the SSD has been installed. You can see here I've called it Scratch Disk, and there it is there. And I've set it as a Scratch Disk for caching there in DaVinci Resolve. Okay, let's see if that has helped. I'm going to create subtitles from audio, select English, and we're going to see if this works. Now it should just generate the subtitles. Sometimes it's a little bit slow, but it should hopefully be a little bit quicker now. But more importantly, it shouldn't crash, because previously it crashed the app. And also previously that was going up to 100%. The SSD for the SanDisk was going to 100%. Yes, we have success. So that was a simple upgrade, but it is one that I needed. The problem's away, and DaVinci Resolve should be more efficient now. It should crash less, and it should just run faster than it was previously. Granted, all of this was my fault. I opted to use an older SSD for caching. That's not always been the case. That was a recent change that I was messing about with. It was a complete failure, but we're back to normal now. All systems are go. So with that little PC upgrade out of the way, it's time to refocus and talk about what the main subject of this video is. Now, the video that the comment was on was published in November 2024, and the comment, as I said, was from Cameron Lee Horace, who asked, what's your plan for the PC now that you have the Mini? And I did post a comment in reply, but the truth is, I don't know. I'm still in limbo. I'm still not sure what the next step is for me. Now, a big reason for that is because I haven't finished all of my testing yet. I still have to test a lot of things. I'm going to talk about some of the testing I've done, but so many things for me to test. It's not just a hardware issue. It's not just a platform operating system issue. There's a lot of settings and configuration setting issues. And there's also the reality that certain apps don't work as well on Mac. Even today, actually, I spent a lot of time with my old Thunderbolt 3 hub, which works great on Windows, but just doesn't work with Apple Silicon. Granted, that's an old hub, that's an easy problem to resolve, but it kind of demonstrates that there's so many things that I have to consider. There's a few hardware changes, there's obviously software revisions and different things, then you've got all the migration of settings. So I will say, I've got the Mac Mini set up just now. I want to show you what I've been playing around with, but I will say, as a separate topic, I do think that the Mac Mini M4 could be the perfect OBS recording computer. It could be the perfect streaming computer. Now, I don't know the answer to that yet. I still have to do more tests, but the reason that I'm saying that is that this is a very cheap computer. It was like $600 when it came out. It's down to like 500 or so in a lot of places, even cheaper if you buy used, which a lot of people have sold on because of upgraded. So it's a great computer, really, it's just amazing value for money, bang for your buck. It's got Ethernet, HDMI, it's got 3 Thunderbolt 4 ports at the back, and you've got 2 Type-C 10 gigabits per second ports at the front. So you can pretty much connect anything to this. There's no Type-A ports, but that's what hubs, etc. are for. So it's a fantastic device, and that's what I have really been thinking about recently. There's a lot of value for me in my setup for just having the Mac Mini as a recording device. The device that connects to all my cameras, that connects to my audio interface, that records everything, and then, handles the storage side of it. I've obviously got like external NVMe enclosures over here as well. So a lot of the files are going over there. Now, the reason that works really well for me in having this separate is, well, one, I've got a Synology NAS. It means that I can, copy the files locally, but then sync them across all my computers very quickly. But also because I like the idea of this being separate. I don't like the fact that everything I've got is on a Windows computer. I know Windows is better now, but I've seen enough BIOS crashes and Windows Update crashes in my time to know that you can't trust having everything in a Windows computer. So I like the idea of having something that's safe, that I'm not really touching that much, and it's only for one thing. And I might go through many different revisions of laptops and computers over the next few years, but this would remain my recording device. Now, I'm not saying that's perfect. It means that you're in a kind of 2-computer solution, but for me, it could be a really good thing. I'm not there yet, though. I can't say as yet whether this is the perfect device, which is why I've been doing all of these tests. Now, I will say the Mac Mini that I've got here, the base model, it's only got 16 gigabyte of memory, but I have been impressed, even just from a video recording perspective. There we go. I've got too many mice here. I'm getting confused. But what I will say is my initial test with DaVinci Resolve, this is really impressive. I did not expect it to perform as well as it has. Now, that's my initial impression. I need to do more tests because my videos, sometimes there's a lot of, clips. Sometimes there's a lot of effects, audio fixes and different things. So it's hard for me to say whether it's the perfect solution, but I must say, even just with 16 gigabyte of memory, I've been impressed with it so far. So it's a little bit hard to manage here because I'm using the wrong mouse again. That's why. Modern problems. Okay, so if I go to Project Manager, one of the things that I did today was I synced all my projects. So here, and you can see here actually, you can see that the volumes here, this is actually in my Synology NAS. This is a local drive, Synology drive, and they're all stored there. So all my projects are backed up there. Now, what that means is that I can sync my DaVinci Resolve projects across all my laptops and computers. Obviously, you don't want them all open at the same time, working on the same file. You'd end up with a database crash. But if you're on separate projects, separate video editing projects, then you're fine. So I've got those settings there. And what that means is I can now work on projects here and, you know, I'm good to go. I don't have to worry about things not transferring over. And also it means that I can work on my Windows laptop or Windows computer and then come back here and work in files here. There will be some issues with as far as jumping from Mac to Windows for a particular project, just for codecs and different things, but there's always a workaround. I just wanted to show you this because this is an example of what I've not tested yet. This is the review of that adapter the other day that I reviewed, this hub. And this kind of illustrates that not every video is just dropping a video file in and picking the start point and the end point. Sometimes you have got lots of footage, lots of effects, and lots of things that you need to work with. And that's where I need to do more testing. Now, the other thing I was testing was OBS. And I've connected my main camera and the overhead camera to OBS earlier today. And I'm grabbing the wrong mouse again. And with OBS, the cameras all seem to be connecting fine. There's no latency issues that I can see as yet. It seems to be okay. It seems to be working okay. But I do need more testing because there might be some latency issues between, you know, like the recording games and OBS, or perhaps even just from my audio interface where the audio and the video doesn't sync up. So I need to mess about with that. I know that a buddy of mine, David Harry, has, you know, kind of tested Elgato capture cards on Mac, and he ran into a lot of problems. So that's one of the question marks I do have jumping over to Mac, is that OBS, I would say, is better for Windows. And I would say that about Elgato capture cards as well. And both of those are basically how I record. So if I go from Windows to Mac, I'm going from something that's, you know, OBS is still good on Mac. It's maybe there's a lot of plugins that aren't available on Mac. But Elgato capture cards just don't get the same amount of updates on Mac as they do on Windows. So there's a lot of things like that I need to check. I'm willing to make some sacrifices, but you do have to, you know, test all these things to see what's going on. So that's why I'm in limbo, because I'm not there yet with the testing. But recently I have been thinking more and more about it. I've been doing more research about it. I think this could warrant another few videos to talk about the subject. But in short, my big, bulky Windows desktop PC, you know, to buy it new, or if I sold it used, if I sold this used now, I don't even think I would get $1,000 just because of the prices of things coming down and people want newer PCs. But despite that, my PC, despite being 5 or 6 years old, will still stand, you know, probably smash most Macs. It will perform better in DaVinci Resolve than most MacBooks and most Macs. Once you go to the kind of Macs that are like 3, 4, 5 grand, that's where, you know, it's a little bit closer, or the Macs are better. But that's amazing that, you know, this computer's probably worth less than $1,000 now, or about that, but it still performs better than a lot of Macs, which are 3 or 4 times the price. So there is that to take into account as well. From a money value, you know, perspective, Windows desktops are going to be so much cheaper for video editing, just so much cheaper. It's incredible. When the problem with Macs is that, yes, the Mac Mini here is cheap, and most other Apple products, the base model is fantastic value. The problem is that DaVinci Resolve wants memory, and DaVinci Resolve wants storage. And yeah, you can end up with, you know, storage is easier to fix. You have the whole spaghetti junction thing with, you know, lots of external drives attached. Memory is harder. Once you buy any MacBook, Mac Studio, Mac Mini, etc., MacBook Air, you're stuck with the memory that you had on day one. You've got that unified memory, and it is effective. And the reason unified memory is effective is because it's all shared. You don't have to start copying things from normal random access memory to VRAM, but you are limited. And the risk is that if you buy a MacBook or something, you've only got 24 gigabyte. If you bottleneck that memory, there's not much you can do. Whereas in a Windows desktop, you just add more memory because you can go up to 128 or 256. And it's the same with storage. You saw that, I just added more storage. It was 2 seconds, but I cannot add more internal storage to a Mac. Once you've bought your MacBook, that's it. That's the storage you've got. That's the memory you've got. And as you know, Apple charge crazy prices for memory and for storage. Now, I'm not crapping on Apple. I hope you appreciate it. I do like Apple products. I do like Apple MacBooks. And I do like, what they offer. But the reality is, from a value perspective, you're just talking about money. It's going to be a lot more expensive for me to jump into the world of Mac. And I might have to spend $2-3 just to get the same performance as to what I've got just now. But all of this started because I do want to move into that. I want to move closer to what Apple is offering. And what I mean by that is the Windows desktop I have is huge. It takes up so much space on the desk. It's hot. I'm going to say noisy, but you can hear the fans. And I would just like something quieter, something more efficient. I don't play games on my PC anymore. I've got the Xbox Series X, I've got the Nintendo Switch 2, etc. First world problems. But yeah, Macs are premium products. They are expensive, but there's a lot of benefits to having them. Now, I'm going round in circles with some of this now, but that's why I've been flip-flopping a lot of this, is because with Windows, you're obviously going to get this, the customization options, the opportunity to expand, and that's true in Windows laptops as well. I could buy a Windows laptop and get 2 8-terabyte drives in there and just bump up the memory to 64 or 128, and it's going to cost me like half the cost of a top-of-the-range MacBook. So Windows offers me value. It offers me more flexibility. But with Mac, you're getting a really nice experience. You're getting a quiet experience. You're getting a minimal footprint. So there's pros and cons to both. I don't really care too much about the operating system. I can switch between Windows and Mac. I do think Windows is getting a little bit annoying with, privacy and bloatware and different problems like that. But it is a modern operating system that doesn't crash as much as it used to. It's fairly reliable now. So I'm happy to move between both of them and continue to move between both of them. But yeah, I do feel like I'm going round in circles again, but really that's why I'm flip-flopping so much. I do want I guess I was going to say reliability, but both of them are quite reliable. But I do want the efficiency that Mac offers. I do want the low noise. And I do like the ecosystem that it offers. And I must admit that I have been impressed with, what this, even just the base model can do. So 16 gigabyte can do that. I think 32, 36, 48 gigabyte, 64 gigabyte of memory would be really good as well. So I've been flip-flopping a lot, but, I'm looking at new Macs. I'm looking at old Mac Studios. I am thinking that at the very least, I'm going to opt for a Mac Studio or a MacBook. But before I get there, I need to do more tests, and I need to try and migrate things over to the Mac Mini here. Actually, one of the things that did hold me back was because that Thunderbolt hub is not working here, so I couldn't connect all the other devices, the Type A devices, etc. But I do have some other accessories now, so maybe I can move on. So thanks for watching, guys. I'm sorry that I couldn't give a conclusive answer to this. I do want to follow up on this topic because I know I've, circled the drain and jumped around a lot of different things in this video. But that, that kind of summarizes the problem that I've got. And I think the problem that a lot of other people would have as well. There might be someone sitting there and maybe with £1,000 and they'll opt for a Windows laptop because it's cheaper and it's more customizable and, they can game on it. To get something equivalent in the MacBook world, they might have to pay $2,500. I don't know. I mean, the recent MacBook Airs are pretty amazing. So there's so many things to consider. So thanks for watching, guys. I hope you've enjoyed the video. I apologize for not answering the question fully, but I am in limbo right now. But I'm going to keep testing. I'm going to keep testing OBS. I'm going to keep testing DaVinci Resolve. I'm going to keep seeing what's possible with Mac. I think when I get to the bottom of that and I'm happy that everything works well in here, I might be making the jump from Windows to Mac, at least from a recording perspective. I'm not closing the door on Windows, of course not, but yeah, I'm quite keen to see if I can pull it off and I can migrate everything that I've got onto Mac. So I will keep you guys updated. If you've got any questions, please do post them below. Got more videos coming, and I do want to cover this subject more. I think it's quite interesting, and you know, I've said this many times, I don't understand the whole Mac and Windows rivalry when it comes to certain debates. You know, people that are just fanboys and they just crap on the other side. There's some amazing laptops and computers in the Windows world, and it's the same in the MacBook world. Don't, you know, just pick a side and stick to it. Pick the solution that's best, and that's ultimately what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to pick the best solution or a hybrid solution. I'm just trying to pick the best setup that works for me. I don't have any bias towards which one I pick. I'm just trying to figure out what is going to make my setup, my desk, my environment better. Okay, over to you guys. Please do leave a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of this. Which camp are you in? Mac or Windows? Which platform do you prefer for video editing? I'd love to hear all of this. Please do share your opinion down below, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Take care.